The DA took to the streets of Cape Town yesterday to demonstrate against reforms to the employment equity laws. The changes will give government the power to set sector-specific equity quotas. The DA says this is a move to extend cadre deployment into the private sector, but government says the criticism shows that the DA has not embraced transformation. It says the party does not want to see equity, but job reservation for certain groups. Labour and Employment Minister, Thulas Nxesi, joins us now to get his views on this. Minister, good afternoon. Welcome to today, and thank you very much for your time on eNCA. You have criticised the DA's stance, and you believe they are not embracing transformation. Are you defending these employment equity, sector-specific equity quotas?
But then we need to emphasize that the employment equity and affirmative action is part of the Constitution. So it is constitutional what we are doing. And we want to indicate that the accusation by the DA accusing the ANC of racializing work opportunities, I think they've forgotten that work in South Africa has been racialized for centuries. And they do not understand that there was a job reservation under the apartheid system where certain jobs were reserved for white people. And we are sitting with that particular legacy, which now we have to reverse. That's why it's in the Constitution that we have to deal with the issue of the employment equity. All what the DA is doing is they're trying to seek to preserve the white privilege.
What are the new amendments trying to address, really? Because we've had employment equity law in the country for some years now, and year in and year out, we get the annual report that shows that, for example, senior management levels in corporate South African organizations and to some extent middle management, but particularly the higher echelons of executive management are still predominantly white.
What we're trying to deal with here, Braden, is that remember that the Employment Equity Act was passed in 1998, exactly to encourage equal opportunities in the workplace, where the black people, and by black we mean African coloreds and Indians, women also, who are so underrepresented, and people with disabilities, they continue today as we speak, after 24 years, to be underrepresented at the high levels of the workforce. So these EA amendments are trying to encourage the employers to set flexible targets to move towards employment equity. And incentives, we're going to incentivize them to do so by linking state contracts to employment equity. So that is in the intention.
Okay. But Minister, what do you say to the critical voices among the colored community, for example, who say that they don't see that they are being regarded as part of black? And I saw the leader of Al-Jamaa yesterday in Cape Town, Hanif Hendricks, saying that they want the government in these laws to stop using colored and Indian, but just use two terms in the Employment Equity Act, blacks and whites.
But then the misinformation and misunderstanding has led to insecurities. And those insecurities, which we are talking about, that's what are causing the confusion. And our argument is simply saying, currently, we are holding the employment equity roadshows to everyone, to every region, to every province, in order to explain to the employers and the employees where we're coming from with this. The example of this is when we met with the Solidarity Union, which had taken us to the ILO and also taken us to court. But we were able to sit and negotiate and be able to explain to one another where they were coming from, where we are coming from. And we had an understanding, we signed an agreement which is going to be turned into a court order. But now what we're saying is we have already started with the roadshows. Those who are not happy must engage us. But we are also saying we are currently considering the public comments on the proposed, what we call them, sector equity targets. And we also intend to push the proposed sector targets for further public comment if there are genuine issues which are being raised.
So the door is not closed,
approach.
yeah. So the door is not yet closed in terms of input. So there could be some changes or tweaks to the proposals that are currently being discussed in this roadshow.
Definitely, we want to listen to our people. We want to listen to everybody. And what we are trying to encourage the TA, they must not grandstand. They had an opportunity when we were designing this law to make their inputs. They must not whip the emotions, racial emotions in this particular country, or race emotions in order to exploit this thing for their own political ends. They must be engaged in the negotiations if they have the issues.
Are you saying the DA is stoking racial divisions through this criticism of the amendments?
Precisely, this is what they are doing. They are trying to protect the privileges of the white. They are whipping the emotions of the colored and the Indian people. They are putting against the black African people against the colored and the Indians, who are all the black communities, who are all the disadvantaged communities. That's what the DA is doing.
Yeah, what's your sense, while I have you, Minister, very briefly, of these amendments? I mean, would you accommodate a view that says in an area like the Western Cape, for example, where you have more people of mixed race, so-called colored people in our country, than you'd have people of African descent, black, would you be alive to the fact that your sector specific quotas would have to take the geographical nuances into account?
Thank you, Breton, for that question, because in the Act, it's very clear that the employers or the sectors, when they set those targets, they are taking into consideration what is known as economic active population. That economic active population is not a monolith or the same all over the country. Because of apartheid, you'd find that the different races are distributed unevenly along the provinces. They can also either use the national statistics in terms of the economic active population, or they can use the provincial statistics in terms of that. So it's up to them to take into consideration the issue which you are asking.
Okay, can you just switch to another topic while I have you, Minister, before I let you go? Recently, you've called for harsher punishments to tracking companies in our country that employ illegal foreigners. We know the kind of volatility and anger this has caused among South African truck drivers. We've seen recently the trucks being torched in various provinces. Is that something your department can actually make sure it's enacted, it's implemented?
We are trying by all means to ensure that we succeed on this one. But we must differentiate issues when we're talking about foreign nationals. There are foreign nationals who are legal in this particular country. They are therefore entitled to jobs in terms of the law and the Constitution. There are those who are refugees in terms of the international conventions which we have signed. They are also qualifying to look for jobs. But there are those who are illegal, who have been brought illegally. And the employers are employing those on the basis that they know they are vulnerable, they want to exploit them, they can be able to take any rating in terms of the salaries. Now, what we are saying is we have to deal with those who are employing the illegal people. We've invited even the unions that when we do the inspections, we must be able to deal with that. We've done a lot of the inspections, combined with the police, combined with Home Affairs. We have been able to arrest a few people, but when we take some of the people to court, they are fined 10,000 or 50,000 And that is sweet to somebody who's making millions. They will repeat it again. But we intend to be very harsh. And that is what we are proposing in terms of our labor migration policy, which is in the pipeline now. It's at the level of NETLEC.
So you want to see harsher punishment, harsher laws to deal with the employment of illegal foreigners in the trucking industry. You say you've got inspectors who are flagging these companies that are illegally hiring foreigners?
Yes, we do have the inspections, and we have done a number of the inspections, working together with the police and the Home Affairs, because there are issues for Home Affairs, there are issues of criminality, but there are issues of the violation of the labor laws. But unfortunately, we seated with about 1,000 inspectors for all the sectors in this country. And you're talking about
enough?
More than...
Is that enough, Minister? Is that enough? 1,000 in a country this big?
Definitely, it's not enough. It's not going to be enough. But it's something which we have to deal with, because it has to do with the resources which you can be able to afford at a particular stage.
So are you satisfied that your department is doing what is required to regulate the trucking industry at this stage, and going forward to see that it is cleaned up of any illegal practices?
We're doing everything. We've gone to the extent then of negotiating with these unions, the ATDF, whatever. We've gone to the extent of negotiating with them. We've gone to the extent of saying to them, you are not recognized or recognized unions because we have not registered, but we are going to engage you. We are also going to create an opportunity for you to register your union and declare your membership. They have refused, because we are saying to them, most of the issues which you are raising are the bargainable issues which must be put into a bargaining chamber. But they've refused, saying we're organizing both the employed and the unemployed. Then we don't understand. So we sit in the meetings, we agree on the approach, and then they go outside and do something else.
Now that's very disappointing, and that's why you're calling for harsher actions. Let's conclude our interview, Minister, the way we began it, around employment equity laws. You said you are on a road show. For how long will this road show be, and when is and what's the timing for public comment, input into what you are trying to do with employment equity laws?
At the moment, I did indicate, Braden, that we are currently busy considering and consolidating all those comments. That date was closed. But if there's an outcry like we've seen, we don't have problems in reopening that, and we hear more ideas, because we know that this issue is very emotive. So let's allow people to vent, but sit and have constructive discussions with them. So it might take us another month or two in dealing with this particular matter.
Are you going to sit with the DA? Are you going to sit with the DA and the other political parties who have misgivings about these amendments?
All parliamentary political parties, they already have the opportunities to engage us. We are not going to just go out on our way to please the DA. They have the processes through Parliament where they can be able to raise those issues. What they are doing now in the streets is just grandstanding.
Employment and Labour Minister Thulas Nxesi, thank you very much for your time, and thanks for joining us this afternoon here on Today on eNCA.